Oh, okay. So I shall begin. So my name is Ian Appleyard. I'm the relatively new research and policy manager at the BACC. So I have the pleasure of introducing our research section celebrating research. I just want us to take a few moments to think about how long people have been doing research in the UK and celebrate all the work that's been done by various individuals down the ages. But there you go. So what not that many people perhaps know is I believe the first PhD that's sitting in the British Library records entitled Acupuncture was actually done in 1884, which seems an awful long time ago. And that was quickly followed by another one in 1892, which is called 50 Cases of Sciatica Treated by Acupuncture, with analysis and remarks, which in some ways seems a remarkably modern title, and you could almost imagine it being a relatively recent PhD. However, there was a huge hiatus from 1892 till 1977, when another PhD was done. From 1977 till today, I could estimate that around 70 PhDs have been completed with acupuncture in the title. So by going to the ethos record, but it was run by the British Library, and just searching for acupuncture, you can see that. Among those 70, there are obviously some people within the BACC who've done their PhDs, of which I'm one, but there are many others now, and they're growing all the time. I should think we should also think back on all the people who've done master's degrees and people who've done more research within their actual undergraduate study, and just see that a lot of work has been done. However, we have to think about the influence and the purpose behind research. Now, basically, somebody needs to mute themselves, I think, I beg your pardon. Basically, there's a lot of, let's say, controversy around research. So in my view, the main engine that drives the acceptance of acupuncture and the continuation of acupuncture has always been that we treat people. And it's been like this for thousands of years, even though in the Tang dynasty, they did effectively forms of research, very simple trials of judging how well certain doctors were doing. But that's the engine that's been driving it, is actually treating people. The research itself sits somewhat on the top of that engine. And it can be a double-edged sword. It can be working for us, or it could be working against us in terms of spreading the word and getting more people to accept and understand what acupuncture can do. And how do we ensure that research is relatively a positive thing for acupuncture, relatively a positive thing for patients, and doesn't actually restrict what people think of acupuncture do, can lead people onto the misapprehension that acupuncture doesn't work for certain conditions. So I picked out a number of just 3 papers that I think are particularly important, sort of landmark papers, if you like. The first one is quite recent. Well, they're all very recent, but the first one by Hugh Macpherson and many others, published in 2010. So it's basically finding a system of trying to judge the acupuncture within clinical trials. For many years, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, the acupuncture carried out in clinical trials was not what we'd necessarily be doing in practice, and not necessarily what we would think of even remotely good quality acupuncture. So what that required was people to gather together and find a way to sort of try and understand whether the acupuncture delivered, and that's been tested in a clinical trial, was of sufficient quality to make the research worthwhile. So an extreme example, if I remember, it was a treatment for migraine, which simply was needling liver 3, Tai Chong, maybe once or twice, and then seeing how the person got on. It was that different from our normal practice. But this is work that people have had to do. And many of you will know that Hugh Macpherson was a BACC member, although you can't see it on this citation. But there was a stricter working group, and that include Mark, my predecessor, Mark Bovey, and also Stephen Birch, who's been talking earlier, and many others who sort of put the time in, spent a lot of time working and studying to understand research methods. And they were able to bring their knowledge both of research methods and acupuncture together to create these guidelines where people can actually go through to make sure that various judgments can be made with regarding to the real, whether the acupuncture is sufficient quality. There is, however, more work that needs to be done, and that's the sham evaluation. We need to find a way to clarify what is actually being measured when we compare acupuncture to sham. It is not a placebo, and it is not what it gets interpreted as when it gets into systematic reviews. And that's part of the work that I did previously, and what I hope we as an organization will be able to do is effectively get the message out to many more people who are willing to listen that sham acupuncture is not an inert procedure, and the way of researching acupuncture needs to change. Otherwise, we are effectively misleading people. We're misappropriating the research methodologies, and acupuncture is not being tested properly. So that's why I say research can be a double-edged sword. If it's done properly, and we can demonstrate and we can learn what acupuncture can treat and what it may not be able to treat, then people can make sound judgments as to whether to include that in health systems or not. But if we don't get the methods right, then we're always going to be stuck with having poor research. And that's why it's important for acupuncturists, traditional acupuncturists, to be involved in research, because it can always, well, it is always quite surprising the extent to which some people who are researching acupuncture do not know that much about acupuncture. Now, we shouldn't necessarily be blaming them for that. They come with certain assumptions, and they don't sit there thinking to themselves, I really don't know what I'm doing. They sit to themselves thinking this should be like this, or they don't understand the potential damage, the assumptions, or the assumptions that they make. For example, an assumption was made that penetrating the skin was absolutely the key to whether acupuncture was real or not, and non-penetrating was not acupuncture. And historically, that's incorrect. Way back to the Yellow Empress Classic, there were non-penetrating needles, and ever since then, in Japanese acupuncture and quite a lot of pediatric acupuncture doesn't penetrate the skin. But that was a misapprehension. And we are, in some respects, still suffering from those misapprehensions, because that has research has been generated on the basis that these non-penetrating techniques are inert, and they're also not truly acupuncture. So we as an organization, as a collective group of memberships, need to be able to engage in that, tell your patients, tell people that you work with, etc., and be familiar with these issues to get the word out, because there's a lot to overturn. The concept of placebo is deeply ingrained within the Western medical research framework. And to say there's no such thing as placebo is a bit of a shock to people. So that was the first paper, which I think symbolized when we started to at least get one half of the equation. What is the acupuncture? We need the other half to be better. What is the sham? based on that work and improved clinical trials, and the luck that Germany wished to investigate this, German governments or insurance companies, we had much larger, much more well-conducted clinical trials into a number of painful conditions. And that led to an individual patient data meta-analysis, which, as far as I'm concerned, is the bee's knees of acupuncture research. And this is what I would hope us all members kind of have a copy of in their waiting rooms or in their clinic rooms. So when people raise questions of acupuncture's validity or whatever, you can bring it out and say, this is really good research, and it shows that acupuncture works. Not only does it show acupuncture works, it shows two critical things: that acupuncture is not a placebo, and that the benefits are long-term, at least up to a year. So being a placebo and being short-term are kind of interrelated misconceptions about acupuncture, and we need to get the evidence to show people the evidence that this is not the case for chronic pain. And that's kind of outreach work, because it's already been done in the highbrow scientific literature. It is there. The problem is we need it to be more widely known within the population, within other healthcare professions, etc., because that is going to be the motivation. When people know that, they'll become more into the guidelines, and therefore more people will recognize acupuncture as a useful therapy. And hopefully that will knock on for everyone's businesses being much, much stronger. A related amount of work, also you'll see Hugh Macpherson's name again. He's here, and that's Andrew Vickers. So this did some work on chronic pain, in particular what's called a look at osteoarthritis of the knee and also depression. So one thing I want to pick out, the quality of research is getting better, and we also need to be able to express to people it is not just chronic pain. Here we've got a good quality study on depression, so we should be able to use that and let it be known to the wider population. The other thing about this is it includes, so that's not just pain, it's depression. The other thing is it's a network analysis for osteoarthritis of the knee. So basically it's a competition between acupuncture and weight loss and exercise and things like that. So there's very good quality research based on the best clinical trials that they could find. And very interestingly, when I've just been updating the fact sheet for osteoarthritis of the knee, which is on the website now. But acupuncture was not included for osteoarthritis of the knee because it didn't meet the minimal requirement of how large the effect was, minimal important difference. So it didn't meet that, which was set at 0.5 when compared to sham acupuncture. But interestingly, what this study tells us is acupuncture meets that minimally important difference if it is compared to weight loss and exercise. And why is that important? It's because the NICE guidelines actually indicate that weight loss and exercise should be the core treatments. So acupuncture is basically outperforming the core treatments as recommended by NICE. And we've got evidence to show that's the case. So we should be able to understand that these things have gone on and be able to engage with our patients, with people that we meet. If you get stuck at a party and somebody starts going off at you about acupuncture not being scientific, hopefully you'll have all of these kind of key papers in your armory and be able to explain to them why they are not right. Okay, so I'm sorry, moving on. So I am here to introduce the next two sessions. These are breakout sessions, which means you have to make a choice. Hopefully that's not too, well, it probably might be difficult for you. So in one breakout session, we have AccuTrack, and this is going to be given by Spod and Nick and they're going to talk about they've developed an app which can help you collect patient data, and is a great way for you to become involved in the research, and you can collect data on your patients, and that can be all sucked up. And I believe they'll also be talking about a specific project they have for long COVID, which may be of interest for some of you. And Cynthia is going to talk about an anxiety feasibility study. And this is kind of the good research that we want to be showing, how well it's pragmatic research. And it's important from the patient's point of view. This is the choice that they find. Do they want to add acupuncture in to their life, and whether it's going to help them or not? Okay, so can I ask you now to, to move to one of the breakout rooms?